Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Tech and Beer. We're live again today from the Celtic Corner in Dartmouth, Nova Scotia. And this is probably the second most important show you're going to watch on TV this week. Obviously the most important is tomorrow, England, going to get to the World Cup final, baby, I believe. And today, Tech and Beer, that's what's most important today. So we're talking to Art Spriggs. Art Spriggs is like IT royalty here in Halifax. He's been in the game a long time. He knows a lot of different people, a lot about where IT has come from and where it's going. So we're going to be talking about trends and technologies and how technology is influencing different things globally. So hey, Art, welcome to Tech and Beer.
Best place I could have been at the time. Let me tell you, there's beer and there's great conversation. That's all that counts.
Absolutely. Cheers.
Cheers.
Cheers. What are we drinking today?
Well, this is a Spindrift Hurricane, and I've been to the Spindrift facility.
IPA.
Yeah, IPA. I went to the facility. I was very, very impressed. They had a individual that sat in almost like a lobby, and they were running the entire brewery. It was a blackout brewery. Like, all they had to do was change the yeast.
Yeah.
The entire thing was blackout, run by technology. They ran in, got their yeast, went out, but everything else was run on tech. Yeah. So incredible. Like I thought, I'll drink that.
So what's your background, Art?
Started off in the financial sector. This was in the 70s, so there's a little bit of an age thing there. But I worked for the Royal Bank of Canada, and then I was with Dun & Bradstreet Corp. So I was involved in corporate credit. And then I was very fortunate in the IT industry, as in it was just sort of a budgeting sort of industry at the time. And Cybertech Trading Corporation, which was one of Canada's largest distributors. There was only two at the time. There was Citation Software out of Winnipeg, and there was Cybertech Trading out of Vancouver. And at that time, you have to understand, Intel wasn't the large processor manufacturer. You're talking about Zilog. Like Atari had 14 different operating systems that were actually for sale. You had, the databases were Ashton Tate, DB2, like there was, the industry was totally different. And the people that ran it were from away, and they wanted Canadian general management. So I was very fortunate that I entered into the IT sector back in the 80s, early 80s. And the interesting thing was I entered in at a very, very high level within the industry, but didn't know a thing about computing. Not a thing. I had no idea where they were going with this. So, but if one spends 8 hours a day within an industry, after 10 years, you catch on.
You catch on, yeah, absolutely.
So I started to catch on, then I went through and I went through VTech. I was the vice president of VTech for a while. And then I went through to Compaq Corp, Hewlett-Packard Corp, now with ABM.
Yeah, System House was in there as well somewhere?
System House, that was just before Compaq Corp. Okay. That's when I left working with the international companies and came into Atlantic Canada and went with System House. Excellent. And then from there, Compaq, HP, and then ABM.
Awesome. So, I mean, that's fantastic, breadth of experience that you've got there, and
a breadth of time.
Breadth of time too. Well, time with experience comes time normally, right? So, what we want to talk about today are some of the trends and strategies and things that we see happening in the global IT market. And what would you say are the key things that we see from an IT business perspective that are happening? What should businesses be aware of? What should they be looking at?
Okay, well, the trends within the industry right now would be, cloud adoption. Yeah. Whether it be private or whether it be public or whether it be a hybrid environment, whether it be a hyper-converged environment where they're changing the dynamics between how that traditional three-tiered architecture works within a data center. You're looking at Internet of Things. You're looking at everything becoming connected, because basically what you're looking at is the fourth industrial revolution is taking place. Right. So you had the first one where you're just getting into the mechanization of things. You're looking at steam power. Yeah. And then that moved on to the next revolution that took place, which was your work lines, and you're starting to get repetitive job functions. Ford started off with your production line environments and things like that. And you started to see electricity coming into play. And then all of a sudden you had the third industrial revolution, which was starting to add compute to that whole thing. And so your compute, your digitization of things. And now the fourth is the connectivity of everything. So you have the Internet of Things. You have machine learning that's predicting things that are taking place because of the vast landfills of data that are out there that they can now analyze. So the industry as a whole is you have a connectivity taking place now between so many things. You actually have a new revolution coming.
It's interesting you talk about, or you mentioned there the analytics and the big data and the analyzation of big things. I was reading an article just this morning and yesterday about how farmers in Ghana, cocoa farmers, are using big data to triple their yield. And there's literally companies out there that are helping farmers that last year produced 4 bags to make more than that. We're not talking big farmers, we're talking small farmers that are benefiting from technology and how technology is being brought to bear on the markets and the industry. So from your perspective, globally, who's making a difference? Who's zooming in and doing those kind of things? Because I think when I hear those stories, that's amazing. That's changing the world. That's benefiting people's lives in different places. So,
and you brought up a very good point. Farming is probably one of those things that's probably the most visible, the thing that can make the biggest impact. There's vast areas of the world that need something different to happen. So I was fortunate enough to attend a conference in the last couple of months, and one of the big players there that was highlighted and profiled and I was absolutely fascinated with was out of New Jersey. They're called Aero Farms, AEROFARMS, like Aero Farms. Absolutely fascinating company, changing the world, definitely changing the world. We're looking at what they call vertical farming. So close to the population base, they have a facility, indoor facility. They use aeroponics, not hydroponics, aeroponics. They use 1% of the land of traditional farming. They use 95% less water than traditional farming. They use no pesticides, and they don't use any genetically modified seeds because they don't need to withstand harsh environments. And they have 390% yields off traditional farming. That changes the world. I can move that anywhere. I can do something with that. I saw an interview recently with Ford Motor Company. Now everybody talks about autonomous driving, right? Okay, so autonomous driving, there's no driver, so on. That's not a thing. That's going to be a thing, but that's not a thing.
Not right now.
Not right now. What we're looking at right now is a process, though. And one of the heads of Ford got up and they went, by 2020, 2020 is not that far away. We're 2018 right now.
Couple of years.
2020 is right there. There will be enough technology embedded into the standard Ford vehicle that 90% of the accidents that occur right now will not occur.
They can already reverse park better than most of us can.
They can certainly reverse park better than I can, especially after a nice spin drift. The Ford Motor Company is doing incredible things, amongst others, to embed technology that would make autonomous driving more of a process. It's not a leap or a leapfrog into, oh, well, now there's no drivers. Now, my son was probably the most insightful when he looked at me, and this was a few years ago, and he said, you know, we're going to look back on today, and we're going to laugh, as I explained to my grandchildren. And when they go, okay, you were traveling down the road in a car at a couple of 100 feet per second in an inner combustion engine 3,000 pounds of steel and glass. And how did you stay safe? Don't worry, son, we painted lines on the road. And that kind of insight from him led me to really be interested in what Ford was doing with the autonomous driving, with accident prevention, with sensors, with so on. And then
the autonomous driving piece has real implications for business too, because the trucking industry, I mean, they've already started making autonomous trucks, semi-trucks that do deliveries, and they've made deliveries on the highway where the computer's just driving the truck. And when you look at the roads here in Canada and the rest of North America, semis are big, powerful vehicles. They're responsible for the movement of so many goods and so many things that we need, but they're dangerous. They're definitely dangerous. When you have an accident with a semi,
it hurts.
It hurts, right? Like
and those are the things that
not surviving.
Can be
mitigated.
Mitigated rather than eliminated, but they can be mitigated to a 90% rate. That's incredible. You look at different technologies that are coming into play, like VR technology. They were wondering, like, outside of gaming and amazing movies, VR technology is coming into play. Skip Russo, with the Institute of Creative Technologies in California, began VR therapy. So he started with a project where he dealt with Canadian and American veterans who were suffering from PTSD. And he realized that in the event that he could use VR glasses and so on to reproduce the point of trauma. So he would put them back into Afghanistan, he would put them back into the places where the trauma took place and treat them within that space.
Right.
And that would go well for phobias, that would go well for so many things. There's a long list of applications that you could use that type of VR technology for. So those are some of the things where the world's making a difference.
Yeah.
The key to it all is how do I secure this down?
Right. So the big trends would be AI, VR. What do you think of cryptocurrencies, Bitcoin?
Okay, that is a very nice. Cryptocurrencies have such opposing views from two factions. You have Warren Buffett, who will sit there and go, cryptocurrencies are never going to be a thing, don't put any money into it, and so on. And then you have the other side, which is a foundational concept behind blockchain and so on, which is financial institutions are changing the world with. So it is that's a diverse one. I wouldn't personally invest in it, but I'm fascinated at, there really isn't any money anymore. It's not backed by a gold standard. It is just a transactional model, and it is a business model. Yeah. And I think that given the right catalysts, that the cryptocurrencies are going to keep maturing into a viable form. Maybe not in their current form, but in a viable form.
And even in that article I was reading that I mentioned earlier about the farmers there, they talked about how in Russia they started using a particular cryptocurrency, which is one I'd never heard of before, so I can't remember what it was called. It began with a K. But they were using it for the farmers to trade between themselves. So I think there's lots of applications for it. It's just how it gets rolled out. And at the end of the day, blockchain is the technology behind it. And that's where the real revolution is in how, because that's what powers the cryptocurrencies. That's what allows them to do what they do. So that's
and I like that.
That's
the reason I like that is you've got a disruptive technology disrupting disruptive business.
Right.
Like the rate of change is perfectly explained in that scenario. You have blockchain can disrupt Uber, and Uber was a recent disruption to an entire industry. Yeah. Because you'll no longer need a centralized repository of administration of funds. Yeah. Basically, blockchain is just a distributed ledger sheet that can be validated by lots of people so that everybody gets paid, and we don't need the central repository. So I could have me contact you, you could turn around, drive me somewhere, I'm laughing. And you're gonna get paid, everybody's getting paid.
Everybody's getting paid.
And I like it.
Absolutely. So we're approaching a first here in tech and beer history. We're gonna need another beer. This is, you know, when you have Art Spriggs on your show, you need to prepare for more beer.
You know, I was talking to a security, a brilliant person in network and security, and that was Glenn Stacy, and he's with Fortinet these days here in Atlantic. Fortunate to have him here. And he mentioned to me that on your show, he wanted to see more beer.
More beer.
More beer.
We can do that.
Less tech.
We can do that. We can do whatever. But that, more beer is very doable.
So I was thinking more beer. And
so back to the tech piece.
Yes.
We were talking about some of the obstacles and things that happen with technology companies that are disruptive, but sometimes run into challenges. And I was thinking a big news story last week. I always pronounce this company's name wrong. Theranos?
Yes. Elizabeth Holmes.
Yeah. What do you think of that scenario?
Okay. So for those of you that don't know,
she was like
Theranos,
changing the world.
Well, absolutely. Okay, so this was the claim.
Supposedly.
Okay, so she went to the venture capitalists in the beginning, all right?
Yeah.
And went to the venture capitalists and said she has a technology that she would like to develop that would take a couple of droplets of blood instead of vial after vial and be able to run full spectrum blood tests. And they would be able to do it faster, cheaper, and there was no need for the big needle scenario, just a pinprick, and off you go.
Yeah.
Goes to the VCs, turns around, $700 million later in VC capital, and a big hype. You gotta have a big hype. If you're gonna get VC capital, big hype.
At one point,
marketing.
She was rated as, like, her personal net worth was like $4 billion.
Oh yes, absolutely. It's zero right now.
Zero.
And what she did is this went over years, and it kept growing. The company valuation peaked at $9.5 billion, and basically the technology she had was error-ridden, would not do any of the big spectrum tests, would only actually do one test.
Yeah.
So there was a perfect example of where the hype of a technology, venture capital funded initiative impacted clinical life-threatening situations. Like Walgreens got into major contracts with her. You had Safeway pulled out of a deal before they even deployed it, and it cost them approximately $300 million to pull out.
Yeah.
And she's facing jail. Like that is
She's
an
been
incredible
charged.
situation.
She's been charged with multiple counts of fraud, and
She would actually use real things made by Siemens, real products made by Siemens and other healthcare people to do the diagnostics.
Yeah.
While saying the machine sitting right beside it was her mini lab.
Which brings into question, like, we're in a fantastic age for startups and for companies that want to develop disruptive technologies. There's money out there. There's a desire to change and leverage the technologies that are coming out. But like, when you're a venture capitalist and you're a company that's starting out, like, how do you, like, it's really hard to quantify. Like, if you're, especially in a field like medicine, like she was in, how do you know what somebody's pitching to you works? It's really
just
hard,
You've
right?
hit on it. You've hit it right on. Like, recently I had the privilege of actually seeing somebody that was a huge venture capitalist investor, brilliant investor, was in on the ground floor of Airbnb, in on the ground floor of Uber, Snapchat, all of them. Like, he was right there and did a great job. You know who he is, and by name, and he's also in like part of a venture capital group like A Grade, and so and now this is what we're talking
we actually
about.
have some other new biz.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
He's part of A Grade right now, which is a $100 million venture capital group. He's a brilliant guy, and he just happens to have been on TV a lot, which was Ashton Kutcher.
Our last waitress was much better looking.
Yeah, well, I know, but that's not what we got. But there's people that probably like him more.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so Ashton Kutcher came out, and he mentioned part of the problem. Like he mentioned that, like in what you were referring to, when he invests in a company, and he's a brilliant investor.
Yeah.
Like his A grades are like 100 million now, and he's brilliant. And he said that if it sounds plausible, he's not listening. Like when he got involved with, he needs to make sure that if the big players in that industry even hear about it, they will discount it as being not a thing. So in Airbnb, for instance, like his theory is okay. So when they did their pitch to him, he looked at them and he went, "So I'm gonna bring in a stranger into my house."
Right.
Or I'm going to stay at a stranger's house.
Yeah.
My wife is going to stay at a stranger's house. My husband's going to stay at a stranger's house. I don't think so. This isn't happening. He goes, keep talking.
Yeah.
Because if the big boys hear about it,
Well,
keep talking. And that was the thing. So she was involved, and the industry is involved in a hype-driven infrastructure. And don't get me wrong, that's not wrong.
Yeah.
But there's no model to compare it to.
Right.
There's no business model that it'll conform to. Auditing isn't going to have any conformity at all to any previous audit format. And that's what made, and in this particular case with Thalanos and things like that, there was a sort of a gray area of clinical testing that they fell into that made that whole thing possible. But
it's interesting what you say though, because you mentioned there about, changing an industry and, how he would want it to be from kind of out of the blue to him, like not in line with conventional thinking. And I've been involved with a couple of startups recently, and they're trying to change different industries like the automotive sector, things like that. But it's really hard to be different. So it would also be very tempting for companies that want to be different, and maybe their intentions are right, so they want to change the way an industry works, but they hit like an early roadblock. And it's like, uh-oh, what are we going to do now? You know what I mean? So
well, even businesses
kind of
today have a hard time even implementing the most basics of
Yeah.
technology into their own environments. It's like you have all the new technologies coming out, and you wonder, how do I adopt them as a business owner,
Right.
as a business company? How do I adopt these new technologies that people are developing through VCs, through all of these things? How do I adopt them fast enough? And that all comes back to what I would call technology debt. You have an infrastructure of debt that you have acquired within your company, and I don't mean financial debt. I mean people debt. So you have resources that are siloed, that only know one thing. You have a server guy, you have a storage guy, you have technology debt that has to be reprofiled, repurposed to be broader. You also have resources within your own data centers that have to, I have a storage array, I have servers, I have networking gear, I have all of these things, and I have a huge investment in these things, millions, in the processes behind them as well, and the applications that run on them, and the security that protects them. But I would call them legacy even if they are a month old, if they cannot handle the change that's required to keep up. And that's tough. So you
make an investment?
It's more than an investment. You need new partners. You need new people to come to the table. You need new thought
The investment's
processes.
not just money, it's time, it's effort, it's
people. And the resource strain.
Yeah.
Tell me everybody wants to stand up in the room that has like raises in their IT budgets for next year. Well, no, it's not happening.
And the resource strain is a really interesting one to me, because you see like organizations, like partners that are out there that say, hey, we're going to partner and we're going to focus on this technology. Well, the moment that technology becomes slightly deficient or slightly replaced by something else, slightly irrelevant, even if it still works like it should do, that opens the door for a new company to come in, a startup or a disruptor of some sort to come in and say, hey, we've got something that's better, something that's new. So as an existing, established organization, how do you fight against that? Like, what's the plan?
The plan is a difficult one, because you do have to start from the ground up, and you have to assess each workload. You have to be able to say, what is the best delivery method currently for this workload, and how do I make it adaptive? It is a process where you're engaging new partners, because here's another one of the problems. The people that are mandated to guide you through that technology maze also have technology and partner debt, where they're going, I have legacy quotas with this partner that tells me I shouldn't move them to this partner.
Right.
So it gets very difficult, but a company should be starting to look at those technologies, your DevOps, or things like that, that'll allow them to decouple the application from the operating environment and things like that, where they can go, okay, I can be more dynamic, I can change faster, I can do things. I might need new technology partners. But they're going to have to rethink the way that they're going to do things, and they have to rethink it every 6 months.
At least.
Max. And then if I come on the show again,
and you will,
it'll be every 3 months, and then it'll be every month.
Yeah.
That's the way it'll go. Technology companies out there, and they're all technology companies now, everything is software driven, everything is software empowered. So that's what they should think of. And
well, the software, like, you can have a tool, you can have a piece of hardware, but the software is what defines the process. The software is how do you use that piece of hardware, that piece of equipment that you've got. The software gives you the flexibility, gives you the capability sometimes to do different things that you might want to do.
An owner should just ask that exact question. You hit it bang on. If it's not software defined, think again.
Well, it's been a pleasure, Mr. Spriggs. It always is with you.
It's like lunch.
It's like lunch every day.
It's like lunch every day.
Where's our lunch?
Where's the
food? But no, it's been good. It's the technology world is ever changing, and there are a few people like you that have the breadth of experience and knowledge to talk about such a broad range of topics. So I appreciate you coming on, and it's been fantastic. I'm sure we'll have you on again. And I want to give a shout out to everybody. Thanks for watching, and check us out. Follow us on LinkedIn, follow us on Facebook, and see you for the next episode, guys.